Okay, this is Jacob Schmidt with DeerHuntingSchool.com. Fixing to look at a aerial photo here of a property. Pretty nice looking area. Uh, it's got some potential of definitely holding some good deer, in my opinion. So Jason is the one that's got the video. Talked with you on the phone the other night, but just going to kind of show you some areas that are, really um, interest me. Some of it we kind of briefly talked about a little bit, but real quick, let me zoom out. I'm going to zoom out just a little here, and I'll show you something that you look like when you look at rivers and stuff like this here, that you're seeing, or a creek, whatever. You see these here, and it makes these bends like that. Okay, and then you actually have another bend like this here, right here. But then you have this big bend. And this is the area, you kind of talked about, was right here. Believe that this here is a thicket right here. And inside them bends, a lot of times the deer and stuff will, bed in there or whatever. But if if a deer's feeding in this area here, and he's, coming this way to get back to this area, these outside bends, which is here, create a really nice funnel and force that deer in a lot smaller, tighter area, which is, what's basically probably going to go on here. Now this bend here may do that a little bit, but a lot of times this here is probably underwater. And if it's not underwater, this here may do that some, right in this area. But that's what happens a lot. And even if you look here, this bend here does basically the same thing. If you have deer down in this area, or this area, that are coming, up in this area, they kind of are naturally funneled down the edge of that river towards this point here, just like these deer here, are kind of naturally funneled close to that area. Okay, so them outside bends, same thing here, for this area here. Okay, any deer in this area just kind of naturally follow that creek, and a lot of times they'll hug tight to that outside corner. You got the same thing here. There were definitely areas to take a look at. Stuff like that is. You got another one here. They're all over this thing. But there were definitely areas to take a look at and keep in mind, of a possibility, possibly having some funnels and some good trails, leading right pretty tight area there. And you can use that stuff to your advantage to get deer in, a tighter range, a smaller area. So especially if you're bow hunting or something, even gun hunting, it kind of funnels the deer down, necks them down a little bit, and gets them in a little bit smaller area. Because you're going to have deer all over this place, all over the place. They're going to be all over the place here. And anywhere you can get them in a little bit tighter area, a little bit more confined, is definitely going to increase your chances of harvesting a deer. Okay. Now, one other thing I really interests me, and that is this island here. It's just a huge island, and I'm gonna circle it here. It's just this huge island here, and I'm just gonna kind of circle it. Not perfect, but that big island right there. I believe a lot of it's going to be marshy. Sometimes it's going to be underwater. I looked at some of the earlier pictures of this area. I've looked at different other maps of this area, of this spot. I've looked at topo maps, different types of stuff like that on this area. But sometimes it's going to nearly completely be underwater. This map here looks like it's probably the water's down a little lower, and there's if there's hunting pressure on. This map actually was took in April, so there's probably no hunting season. But if it's like this here and there's a lot of hunting pressure around these areas, here, there's very few people going to take the effort and time to get across this water. Especially when I looked at the trouble that they would have to go to. Me and you kind of talked about it on the phone just briefly. The trouble that they're going to have to go through is going to be a lot. And I don't think there's going to be a lot of hunting pressure on it. Matter of fact, there's probably not going to be hardly anyone hunting that. And there is, you know, some, especially one area right in here, in this area here. Let me change colors. I think you can see what I'm doing, but I'm just going to change colors there to so we can really see it. But this area here in the green, all through here, that's about 30, 40 yards across. And if you look at it on the Bing map, which I'm not going to pull up because it discloses this area too well, but all through there, these are, you know, about 30 yards or so. So if you had a you know, a deer in this area and it was traveling, you know, this to over here, it's basically doesn't have anywhere to come through other than, you know, this really tight funnel right here. And it's a great funnel. It's, you know, not that the deer can't swim the river on either side, but because they can. But unless they're really forced, you know, bad wind, you're hunting a bad wind or something, they're just, you know, likely to just come through there, you know, pretty casual, you know, without any heavy hunting pressure. And this also, there's like, I looked at it on Bing, there's like a, you know, maybe like a little creek piece here that runs through, so it actually divides this area, you know, where the deer either have to walk, you know, through here or through here. You know, and there's spots like that where there's water, you know, scattered out through there. It's really marshy, and and looks to be really thick. That island the whole island looks to be really thick, just like this point here looks to be really thick. But them, you know, deer that are coming through there, if you're hunting, you know, this is north here. If you're hunting, you know, and then obviously this is south, and then east. And then west is over here. If you're hunting, you know, and you have a, you know, say a, you know, northeast wind, so, you know, our wind is blowing like this here, you can get, you know, really tight, you know, to somewhere like this here, and use that river as a barrier. Get close to that riverbank. You know, you could set you a stand or a tree there, something like that, on a northeast wind, or even a northwest wind. Or just a straight north wind. It really doesn't matter. If you get tight to that, that's going to blow your scent out into this water. Okay, and as them deer come through, you know, they're forced basically to stay upwind of you because you're on the very south part of this funnel. Now you could also do the reverse thing with any kind of a south wind. You know, you could hunt somewhere on the north side of the funnel here. And then we're talking, you know, wind blowing, you know, somewhere, you know, like this here, or, you know, a wind like that, where basically it's taking your scent out into this area of water. Okay. Now it can blow your scent plumb across, you know, and deer can wind you over here, but you're likely not to see them deer anyways, or even have a shot at them deer while you're hunting this. And the trouble that it's going to take to get in and out of here is going to keep a lot of other guys from doing this. So, you know, and a benefit of it as well is you can, you know, come in through the water, access your stand. You know, if it's a north wind, you access your southern stand here from the water. And, you know, you may walk, you know, 10 yards or something, and bam, you're in your stand. You're putting no scent on the ground almost whatsoever. And then obviously, you know, you come in this way, and this come in on the north side on the south wind, and then boom, do the same thing. You know, and they don't have to be this exact spot. You could put, you know, one here, one down here, or you could even put one here, and one, you know. Just, you know, get in there and look at it. But that's definitely an area that I would look at is this island. I think as the hunting pressure ramps up, especially if you have heavy gun hunting pressure, I really believe that you're going to have deer just really pile up in this area. Okay, I believe that you're going to have quite a few deer using this island here. There's another island here. I believe may possibly this be the same way. You know, quite a few deer used it. You know, and these tight areas here are probably going to be where the deer are crossing to get on the. You know, they're going to probably come from here, cross this tighter area, and access this island. Where they don't have to swim a long ways or whatever. And I know me and you talked and you said the deer could probably walk across most of this anyways. So that seriously interests me. And then this here's no different. You know, these really close areas, these deer, you know, are probably going to cross it. And some of them areas where they're crossing may be good spots to hunt. It keeps you off of the island. This is probably going to be the bedding area a lot during the heavy hunting pressure. A lot of the deer are probably going to bed in there. Probably going to sort of be a sanctuary for the you know, a lot of the deer. And you know, these, you know, that's something you want to check out. Just basically get up and down here, scout these. You want to scout these tight funnels that I just showed you. You want to scout these real tight areas here. See if there's a lot of areas where a lot of deer are crossing or whatever. If you find a lot of deer crossing, and they may be crossing out here in these wider areas too, you know, but them are areas that I would keep a look on. And obviously, anytime you're coming up down through there, you know, you want to be looking on the bank and stuff and see if you can see areas where there's a lot of deer crossing, because them crossings can be excellent areas to hunt as well. You know, depending on different wind directions and things like that. So, you know, that really interests me. And then, you know, I already mentioned all these turns here and stuff. All this area is marshy. The thing that I do like about this area, I said at the beginning of the video, I think this area has some real potential. And the reason I believe that is you have a variety of habitat. You have a variety of terrain. You have marshy, swampy, mucky, just some real thick, nasty stuff. You have some really hills, mountainous kind of range. You've got a lot of water, a lot of different types of food. You're going to have, you know, different types of food in this swamp area as you are up on the side of these hills and these mountains. You know, to where you're going to, and then you also have some fields and stuff around, you know, to the north here. You know, here's one of the fields and stuff like that, and them trying to be discreet as possible here. You know, here's a field here. There's this field here. So, you know, and that's pretty good ways, you know, from this other spot. But you've got a variety of habitat for the deer. You've got pines here. You've got hardwoods here. You've got a swamp marsh here. You know, you've got basically mountain terrain here. And I looked on, I'm going to go back here because you can see it better in a different year. So I'm going to go back here. And see, yeah, here's one image. You see where this is basically, a lot of this is underwater. This image here was in June. Probably a lot of rain going on there. You can actually see part of this here is flooded. But you know, this is definitely, you know, a lot of this island is underwater. During that time, you know, probably not a lot of deer out here. If they are, they're going to be on them little small patches of island. They can swim this water no problem. You can see here, this is all underwater. A while ago, it was kind of looked like a pond. And even this is actually, a lot of this is underwater here. So, you know, this is going to be all different timings. This island's going to be good at certain times. It's going to be better at some times than others. When hunting pressure is really ramped up around, a lot of people, putting pressure on the deer. A lot of the deer will, use that as a sanctuary, as a safe daytime place. It's an area you want to be careful on when you're hunting, though, because the deer are there. They're kind of pushed in there, and they don't have to be there. They can go find somewhere else. So if you overpressure it or make some huge mistakes, hunting the wind wrong and stuff, you can push the deer out in other areas. So I'm going to go back. We're getting close, and here's this picture here. You can see, this is basically all land again, and then here's that little, looks more like a pond here. Where's this picture? Yeah, this picture here, to me, I can really see. I mean, you can see this in great detail in topo. You can see this saddle here a lot better with a topo map. But there's a saddle right here. You can see it here. I mean, you can tell this is higher and this is higher, and then basically, it runs lower here and here. And what happens a lot of times is these bucks will cruise these ridge tops a lot, during the rut, and they'll come up and down these fingers, here. These high spots sometimes are good spots, where they connect a lot of fingers together. This one here is not so much as one of them spots, but you have this saddle here, and it connects this lower ground here to this lower ground here without having to take this huge mountain. The deer will cut through like this. Let me erase all this. The deer will, cut from, here. They'll cut across like that in either direction. They'll cut either direction, through that area. They'll also take these ridge tops a lot of times, and in search for a hot doe, and he may take a route something like these areas here and go this way and, come up here and maybe even, come off this finger here and, out of this area, whatever. But there's concentrated traffic here. It's a conversion area where a lot of stuff kind of run together in them saddles, and that's definitely a saddle. There, and there's multiple saddles. You can look on that at a Cal Topo, and you can or any topo map, but that's one I use is Cal Topo. You can look on it and get a good idea of the saddles and stuff. Basically, all you do is look for a high point. Let me erase this real fast. To see a saddle is basically the best thing to look for that really makes the saddle stand out good. Is you'll have a high point here, and you have a high point here, and then you'll have lines kind of like that. Your contour lines will kind of run like that and like that, and but you'll definitely notice that there's a bullseye. There'll be a bullseye and then a bullseye, and then there's a little bit lower spot in between them, and that's a saddle. That's creating a saddle. So the easiest thing is to look for the two bullseyes there when you're looking at a topo map, and you can see them on Google Earth. I mean, I can see that a little bit. But it's well defined if you're looking on a topo map. It's just well defined. And another area that interests me, and areas that I like to look for on these hilly terrains and stuff, is when you have a ridge here, you've kind of got a finger here, you've got a ridge running down here, you've got a ridge top here, you've got a ridge top here, a ridge top, you've got a draw coming up, you've got this draw here coming up, you've got this draw here coming up, You've got a draw here coming up, and all of that points to this one area. Okay, that's another area that interests me, especially in the seeking phase and the chasing phase of the rut, the beginning of the rut. And even any time of the hunting season, but especially during that time when the bucks are really moving and they're really cruising a lot of ground. They're like funnels. I mean, at some point a buck is gonna cross them because he's going to be taking these ridge tops as he's scent checking for does, and he's going to be running these draws and stuff, and they all point to one direction. Okay, I mean, if he takes this draw here, let me change colors, because it's kind of like this right here. If you got a big buck in the area and he's cruising this draw, and he follows the draw, it's going to run him here. Okay, if he's a type of buck that likes to cruise the ridge top, or he's cruising the ridge top this day, it's going to lead him here. Or if he's taking this ridge top, it's going to lead him here. If he's taking the side of this draw, it's going to lead him here. If he's taking the side of this draw, it's going to lead him here. If he's in the middle of the draw, it's going to lead him here. It points to one area, and a lot of times them are some good spots, and there's a lot of them areas in this area. It's where kind of basically everything runs together. This one here is kind of enhanced a little bit because he may be taking the side of this draw, and he hits these edges of these pines, and he may hug these pines as he comes through, and that leads him right in here to this bullseye. That's what I want to look for. It's kind of like a wagon wheel if you put it all together and you just draw it all out. It just kind of makes a wagon wheel, like all the spokes are coming to the center. I want to be in the center where all the spokes are leading, because he's going to take one of them spokes at some point. The big buck's going to come through there. Okay, so them are, a lot of the areas. Some of these ponds out away from this main marshy area, if you get out away, quite a good ways, you get to some of these ponds, it's out away from there. That we're talking, from this area here, from this water source here, we're talking, let's just look at it in miles and see how far it is. You're talking almost a mile to the water. Okay, just because there's a whole ton of water all around, because there's swamp everywhere, doesn't mean that some of these water sources, when it's dry or a little bit unseasonably warm, especially if there's some thick stuff or pretty close to it or around it, where deer are bedding, or these deer are going to hit these water sources, and a lot of times. You'll find, especially if you're bow hunting, that these water sources, this water source is about 40 yards across. So basically, deer anywhere, if you're set up on the edge of it, deer comes in, he's basically in bow range anywhere around it. And you can find, little smaller ones, but don't overlook these water sources thinking, well, there's so much water all in the area. A deer's not going to walk a mile to go get water when he's got water here. If it's pretty dry and maybe unseasonably warm, maybe it's in the rut and he's been running hot trot, searching for does, and he may use that water. He may hit that water source as a slight break. Even this water source here is a lot closer to the main water. You want to check them, looking for older rubs that was made possibly in the rut, and things like that, different times of the year, to see, hey, is this an area that bucks are using, maybe during the seeking phase and the chasing phase of the rut, or maybe even a doe group is using that during the breeding phase somewhat regularly as a water source, as their main water source, if, on a little bit drier spells and things like that. These may be these ponds can definitely lead to some good deer hunting. So don't overlook them just because there's a ton of water around. Them deer are not going to walk all the way down to this riverbank to get a drink when they have a pond right here. Check them out. Looks like there's a real small one here possibly. You know, and that one's right there close to the ridge top. You know, where, you know, some of these kind of spider wheels come together. Here's one right here that probably is a pretty good um, water source for quite a few deer. I mean, you have a ridge top, a ridge top, a ridge top, a ridge top, slightly, maybe even a saddle slightly. You know, a ridge top here. You got a pretty flat area here, it kind of looks like. You got this area here, but you know, you have a few, and you got some draws coming up. This draw here kind of comes up, you know, more into here, but you know, a buck that's been, you know, that's walked, you know, 10 miles, you know, in the past, you know, 8 hours or something, or maybe even less. He may walk 10 miles in the past 2 or 3 hours. He gets close to a water source, he's very likely to stop and get him a drink. And he's going to check that water source a lot for doe activity to see, you know, if there is, you know, a doe in there. And a lot of times when he does that, he may be a little thirsty because he's cruised a lot of ground, and he'll you know, slip in there and get him a drink. And if you're set up on one of these water sources, you know, it can definitely lead to giving you a really nice shot at a deer. I mean, they're going to be pretty calm when they come in there. They're going to stay there for a few moments. Not a spot that they're going to hang around for a long, long time, but usually a spot that they'll give you a really nice shot at them. So you know, want to keep stuff like that in mind. And then the other area, I mean, you kind of briefly discussed. I think that's all I had for this area here. But we've kind of briefly discussed this area over here, where you have this clearing and stuff, and here's another one of them areas where the ridge top and a lot of stuff come together up in here. You know, that's an area I want to check. There was a saddle. Here's another one of them spots where a lot of them come together. There was a saddle I seen on topo somewhere. There's a small saddle here, but it's coming off this ridge to that ridge. But there was a really nice. Here's a small one here. Here's one here. It may not be as visible on Google Earth because a lot of times the saddles aren't as visible as they are on the topo map. And I think this is going to be. I think this is the one. There was one that was just really nice looking, and that's where you have this peak here and a peak here, and you've got, you know, deer cruising the ridge top, dropping down through here. You know, deer cruising this ridge top, you know, coming down through here. This is all kind of connecting here. And then you have this draw, you know, where the bucks are, you know, that are over here are wanting over here, you know, and without walking up this really steep base, they take that little bit easier route. Plus, they're coming down this ridge. So, definitely areas like that. Definitely areas I want to check out. I want to check out these ridge tops, these fingers that are running off. I want to look for rubs leading up and down them, maybe even on the side of them, you know, something like this. I want to check these, this draw that comes up in and out of here, these areas here, for rub lines. And I want to try to find where all of them rub lines kind of converge in one spot, because if I find them areas, and to me, looking on aerial photo, it looks like it's going to be somewhere. Let me change colors here. Looks like it's going to be somewhere in this area. You know, and anytime you look on aerial photo and you actually get out there, it could change a little. But the thing about these video analysis and stuff that I do is pinpointing areas of interest. Okay, instead of hey, I need to go out here and scout every inch of this 20,000 acres or you know, whatever, 10,000, 100,000 acres, or even if it's, you know, 100 acres. You know, instead of trying to scout every single inch of the property, I can key in on specific little areas that are of interest and really look at. and that helps a lot, there. So you want to check these areas out. Just because this spot here is the spot I'm circling, I want to check, this vicinity right in here. I don't necessarily want to waste all my time, um, plumb over here scouting this here, unless there's something that leads me to believing that this is an area I want to look at. There's going to be deer everywhere at some time. There's going to be a deer everywhere out through here, and there's going to be some good deer all over this place. And if you spend all your time searching every single spot, you're going to waste a lot of time, and then you're going to have these few little areas where everything kind of come together, where there's more congested deer traffic and stuff, so there's more deer coming through. And this area here, we had discussed, is pretty close to this really high point. If this is good food source, there's probably going to be some deer around this. It's close to water. It's close to a really high spot. It's off of one of them fingers, one of them ridges that's coming off of this very top. It's on one of them fingers. So this is an area, I would definitely check it out. This is an area that I would, if I'm over here close to it, I would definitely check it out, because it's got several different habitats that come together in a small area. And a lot of times when you have that, you have an edge here, you've got an edge over here, and obviously it runs all the way up. You have an edge here, okay, because we have the pines, and then vice versa. You have the same thing over here. So you've got several edges with several, transitions in the habitat, and in areas, a lot of times you'll have multiple types of food. And when you do that, some deer will feed on they may be feeding on this type of food here. I'm just shooting out something. They may be just feeding on this type of food early season. Okay, and then they may be feeding right here on this edge on some stuff that was grown up. They may be feeding on that, mid-season. Okay, and then right here on this edge here, there may be a certain type of plant that really produces good quality food for the deer late season. Okay, so a lot of times you'll have an area like that, and you'll have deer will come there year round. And obviously, usually what happens is, parts of the year that is more active than the others. And until you get in there and see what's actually there, see what type of food sources there are in the area, see what type of how, if this is real thick. If this field looking area is really thick, it's probably going to be used as bedding area, because of deer, feeling very comfortable out here, and it's high. They like to bed, up high a lot of times, and then they'll drop down in these valleys and stuff and feed, and out into these oaks and feed, and different type of stuff like that. So I think that for the most part, this property here, that is for the most part, what the areas I would look at. Obviously, there's a lot of these areas where, like I talked about over here, where all this kind of comes together. These areas where I have a ridge top here, and 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 a draw here, and they all come in one area. There's multiple areas like that. There's one here. There's a small one here where there's 1, 2, and 3. And then you have the saddle, here. And then there's these inside turns, which is thick here, okay, which is really thick here, which I believe is probably going to be bedding, and these deer coming in and out of here, and a lot of times they're going to be funneled down the edge of this river. And then you have, some thick areas all over this island and stuff. But there's all kinds of these wagon wheel type areas here. You know, there's several of these bins. Not every one of them is going to have the really thick cover like this has. You know, this one here may not on this inside and this outside turn. I didn't look at that real well and or if I looked at it, I can't remember if this is thick, but if this is real thick, you're probably going to have deer bedding in this area, and then they're going to be kind of funneled, you know, pretty close to this outside turn as they come through. And there's multiple of them. There's a lot of them to check out. You know, you have one here, which is obviously on this side. You got one here. You've got one here. Everywhere that river makes a hard turn, there's several of them right here on these islands. You may have deer bedding here. You know, if you've got deer bedding here, you know, they may come right out through this here when this is creating a funnel. Them are areas like that you want to check out. You know, if there are deer bedding here, you know, it would be a very good spot to put a stand because he's got to really be neck down as he's coming in and out there. You know, them are areas, just get in there, look at the different areas of interest. You know, not everything is what I would go and, you know, spend my time walking all over the area. I'm going to spend my time looking at these areas that really draw my attention. I'm going to spend some time looking at these different ponds and stuff, especially the ones like this one here that's kind of on that ridge top. Or was it? Yeah, it was this one here. It's kind of on that ridge top where there's several different ridges kind of pour into this one area close to that pond. You know, because then buck's going to cruise them ridges and draws and stuff, and it's going to lead him pretty close to this pond. And if he's been, you know, seeking and looking for does a lot, he's probably thirsty and going to stop and give you a close shot, especially with a bow. This area here, this pond here, I would honestly look at this one too as well. Because of the different type of habitat. There's not a whole lot of pines in the area. If this is thick, you know, you may have some bedding going on really close to this. This is probably a little too large for what I like. There's a small one here. You know, but I'm not going to walk every single one of these valleys and every one of these ridge tops. I'm going to sit here and look on this aerial photo and find where they all kind of run together like I showed you, you know, and look at them areas, and I may walk a little ways up and down each ridge and each draw and stuff. So anyways, I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope it helps you out, Jason. I really think that this area has potential to hold some really mature deer. They have a lot. It's very difficult to get in here. It takes a lot of work. There's not going to be a ton of hunters do that work. There's just not. There's not going to be a whole lot of hunters that go that extra step to get down in here. You know, go through all that hard work to get in these areas. They're not, and that leaves for some, you know, untapped hunting locations. And even if they do get, you know, pretty close, you know, they're going to be, you know. Even if, you know, some hunters do get pretty close in some of these areas, they're going to push these deer in some of these other areas that are difficult to get to. And you've got just miles and miles of marsh where the big bucks can really get away and really, you know, have a lot of escape areas. I really feel like there's some potential for some really large deer. I hope you can harvest some nice deer out of here, and maybe a few does and stuff. And if you have any questions or anything, feel free to email me. You know, you have my email address, and I'll help you out as best I can. If you have any other areas around here you may kind of look at, feel free to do that as well. You know, I'll just go on the website and get a video analysis, and I'll look at it. So I hope this video helps you out, and I wish you luck, Jason, and everyone else that watched it. I hope y'all enjoyed it, and I wish you guys luck as well. Thank you, and have a good day. Remember, everybody, check out deerhuntingschool.com for more tips and information and things like that on deer hunting. Have a good day, and bye-bye.